It starts with something almost nothing, a partial thumbprint on a shipping brace. Local databases couldn't do much with it, so it just sat there, until NGI ingested it and connected it to a face captured by a low-light security camera in a Chicago loading bay. That match didn't just identify a suspect, it challenged the entire story the documents were telling. The director on paper wasn't the one moving the capital. The real financier was. And once investigators shifted from chasing companies to centralizing on the human operator, the network's three-continent choreography began to show itself. So how does a guy make nearly $200 million worth of movement look like plain business? He doesn't act like a gangster. He acts like a boring accountant with perfect folders. Every company has a lease. Every office has a utility bill. Every file has a tax ID. Vendors check out. Directors sign where they're supposed to sign. Audits come back clean enough to pass a quick look. Import licenses sit in the right drawers. Even the warehouses look real, with signage and all the little details that make people stop asking questions. And the trick is, none of that is fake in the obvious way. These businesses can exist on paper and in real life at the same time. A shell vendor still buys something, sells something, ships something. A mule bank still runs like a bank. A proxy director still has a real passport and a real signature. Then they rotate. New director, new paperwork trail, same business purpose. If you're a compliance officer with a stack of alerts and 15 minutes to decide what matters, this looks like routine trade. On the surface, the wires behave too. They move between senders and receivers that look like they belong in the same world. Invoices match the story. The names on documents match the names on accounts. Passports scan as valid. The shipments don't scream contraband because they aren't labeled like contraband. Nothing announces itself. It's the financial version of dressing plain so nobody remembers your face. Here's where things got really interesting. Modern enforcement doesn't need a confession, and it doesn't need an informant sitting in a car whispering details. It needs context. If investigators can see timing, routing, and behavior across systems at once, clean paperwork starts to matter less. Because the paperwork tells you what something claims to be. Patterns tell you what it actually does. That's why integrated environments like the FBI's DIVS matter. Think of it as context-first surveillance. A bank files a suspicious activity report because something feels off, but that report alone might not prove anything. Now place it next to FBI case files, next to DHS travel data, next to state travel records, next to prior advisories from partner agencies, next to earlier seizures that never seemed connected. In that view, a wire isn't just a wire. It's a moment inside a larger behavior chain. And once you're watching behavior, the one thing flawless paperwork can't hide is rhythm. This operation had a timing tell. A transfer would move during what investigators call a dead zone window, when fewer eyes tend to watch and fewer people are available to question it. Then it would speed up. Not in a messy way, in a controlled way, through foreign hops that stayed just under reporting thresholds. The amounts didn't have to be outrageous. The speed did the talking. Analysts started asking the simplest questions. Why this hour? Why this corridor? Why this many hops? Why does it settle faster than the normal curve for this route? Those questions sound small, but they don't have small answers. One theory they use is the train with a lagging car. Most cars move with the train like normal commerce. Bills go out, payments come in, and time passes in a predictable way. But one car keeps arriving late, then rushing to catch up. It repeats, over and over. That lag and sprint becomes a signature. Not a name, not a fingerprint, but a signature of control. So they test it. They compare the transfer's hour against compliant baselines. They compare the corridor and whether it matches typical trade lanes for those entities. They count hop numbers and watch the handoffs, looking for that same pause followed by a sudden acceleration. Then they pull other transactions and other companies to see if the same rhythm shows up wearing different paperwork. And that's where the mask slipped. Because trade doesn't move like choreography. It doesn't build in a pause, then sprint at the exact moments that avoid attention. This did. The pattern said one operator kept time across multiple clean entities, like a drummer nobody could see. Once the rhythm says that, the question isn't which company is dirty. It becomes, who is the person keeping the beat? Once the rhythm points to a single operator, the whole game shifts. Because the companies can keep swapping names, directors can keep rotating, and invoices can keep looking fine. The real question turns into something more basic. How do you identify the person who never signs the wires, never appears on the key documents, and never owns anything on paper? It starts with the smallest, most annoying kind of evidence. During a routine customs inspection, someone finds a partial thumbprint on a shipping brace. Not a clean print. Not the kind that screams case closed. Just enough ridge detail to tag it, log it, and move on. Locally, it doesn't go far. It sits in a file because partials do that. They don't match fast, and they don't match often, so they end up parked like a dead lead. Here's where things got really interesting. That print gets a second life when it enters NGI, the Next Generation Identification System. NGI doesn't treat old evidence like it has an expiration date. It pulls in fingerprints, visa photos, prior border encounters, and facial recognition candidates, then lets the data collide in ways a local office never could. A fragment that meant nothing on its own can start to matter once it sits next to years of travel records and biometric history. NGI's facial recognition side is built for imperfect images. And in this case, the system doesn't return a crisp headshot and a home address. It returns a candidate. A face captured by a low-light camera at a Chicago loading bay. Grainy enough that a defense attorney would smile, but clear enough for the system to generate a match score and push it to the top of a review pile. The match score isn't a verdict. It's a signal that says, look here next. And that next part matters because no one gets arrested just because software says so. A high-confidence hit triggers human review. Examiners look at facial features the software flags, like ear shape, the outline of the temple area, and small marks that stay consistent across years. Then they sanity check it against real-world movement. Does the person travel in a pattern that fits the business story? Do border encounters line up with key dates? Do they show up in places where money turns into cargo, and cargo turns back into money? That's when the paper story starts falling apart. The director listed on corporate filings isn't the one showing up near the critical handoffs. The owner on invoices isn't the one near the loading bay. Instead, the same individual appears around multiple entities that are supposed to be separate. Different company names, different directors, different bank accounts, but one repeating presence. Like a hidden signature that keeps showing up where it shouldn't. So investigators stop treating this like a puzzle about companies and start treating it like a puzzle about control. They centralize the case around the operator who can move funds between mule banks and proxy directors without ever touching the documents. The money still matters, but now it becomes supporting evidence. The main evidence becomes the pattern of a person shaping the movement. The network itself looks clean if you isolate the parts. Import operations in Illinois look like regular trade work. Invoice generation tied to Karachi looks like back-office paperwork. Gulf-based escrow custodians look like boring middlemen who hold and release funds on schedule. A Mexico-linked logistics shell can look like nothing more than routing support with the right stamps and the right contacts. Each piece can pass a basic check. Together, they form a system with one conductor. He thought he could outsmart law enforcement by hiding behind fake companies across 3 continents. But investigators didn't need to prove every single company was fake. They only needed to show the same operator kept showing up behind the timing, behind the handoffs, behind the parts of the chain that actually mattered. And once that operator is pinned down, enforcement stops chasing transactions after they clear. They start deciding where to squeeze, where to wait, and where to shut the valves. That's when the empire hits a wall. 2:14 a.m. One wire, clean on its face, but off in timing and speed. It cleared 2 foreign hops too fast, beating the normal settlement curve for that corridor. DIVS didn't need a tip. It just asked the only question that mattered. Why did this money move like it was running from something? After that, banks didn't watch anymore. They cooperated. Legal process flagged the corridor. Provisional designations hit. asset paths locked, and money stalled mid-flight. So here's the question. Can privacy and security coexist when systems hunt patterns, not crimes? And what happens when criminals learn the rhythm gives them away?